Hi, it's me, and today I'm checking out what could be one of the most important lenses on the Fujifilm GFX Medium Format system, especially for landscape photographers. It's the GF 20-35mm f4 RWR. Currently, it's priced at £2,000 here in the UK, or about $2,000, so it's definitely intended as a professional workhorse ultra-wide lens. And I'd like to thank Fuji UK very much for loaning me this lens for a week for testing, although as usual, this is a totally independent review. This thing's zoom range is the full frame equivalent of about 16 to 28mm, so that's an ultra-wide to moderately wide angle. For landscape, architecture, texture, and all kinds of other photographers looking for extra high resolution images, this thing is going to make itself incredibly useful to you, not to mention quite versatile, even if that maximum aperture of f4 isn't especially bright. It's a wonderful experience to shoot wide angle on medium format. The more square-shaped 4:3 aspect ratio images mean that you have a bit more image to choose from if you want to crop, and your pictures can be absolutely packed with detail. Well, if the lens that you're using is sharp enough, that is. So let's find out and take a look at this thing. The first thing to note about the lens, of course, is that it is really big, and at 725 grams or 1.5 pounds, it's rather heavy also. Its construction is a mixture of metal and plastic to keep the weight down, and it's well weather sealed with a nice gasket around that huge rear Fuji GF mount. Then comes an aperture ring, which has nice positive clicks every third of an f-stop, and can also be locked in or out of automatic mode, a useful feature. The largest control on the lens's body is the rubberized zoom ring, which turned lovely and smoothly on this copy of the lens without falling under its own weight. Actually, it's one of the smoothest turning zoom rings I've ever handled. Then comes the rubberized manual focus ring, which again turns lovely and smoothly. The focus response to turning that ring is a little jerky, like on other Fuji system lenses, but the good news to see here is that you don't really catch too much focus breathing, whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out, just some focus warping at 20mm. The lens's autofocus motor runs very quickly, quietly, and accurately. No issues here at all. The lens has an 82mm filter thread size, comes with a thin-sized lockable plastic hood, and it does not feature image stabilization, but then again, most new GFX cameras have stabilization built in nowadays. Overall, the build quality is absolutely fine here, and the extensive weather sealing is a nice bonus. Just bear in mind that this thing is bigger than you might think, so carrying it up and down mountains for landscape photography will be a bit of a burden to you. Anyway, more importantly than that comes image quality, and I'm not taking any prisoners here. I'm testing it out today on a 102 megapixel camera, the Fuji GFX100 Mark II. These are images with Fuji's in-camera corrections turned on, as they are set to do automatically. At 20mm and f4, we see stupendous image quality in the middle, brilliant sharpness and contrast through and through. That sharpness continues across the image frame until we reach the very corners, which are a little softer, as you can see. Still, this level of sharpness is quite acceptable, considering we're on a 100 megapixel camera here. The good news is that all you have to do is top down to f5.6, and sharpness and contrast become excellent in the corners now. The image stays this sharp down to about f11, although f16 starts to look softer due to the effects of diffraction. Alright, well, let's zoom into 35mm now. At f4, image quality again is absolutely perfect in the middle, razor sharpness and excellent contrast. The image corners again are a little softer, although better than they were at 20mm. Again though, stop down to f5.6 and we see incredible image quality emerging straight away. This really is impressive on such a very high resolution sensor. Again, the lens stays this sharp down to f11, although f16 gets a bit softer due to diffraction. Overall though, it's an absolutely awesome performance here. The lens is very sharp straight from f4 with excellent contrast, and if you need critical sharpness, then just stop down anywhere between f5.6 and f11 for absolutely brilliant image quality. Nice, and just what you want to see really in a $2,000 ultra-wide angle lens. Alright, well, let's bypass Fuji's in-camera corrections by shooting in RAW and take a look at distortion and vignetting. At 20mm we see strong barrel distortion being projected here, as well as strong vignetting at f4. At f5.6 and f8, those corners start to brighten up, but they never see completely even illumination. Zoom into 35mm and we see a huge flip into strong pincushion distortion now. I've never seen such a flip in a lens with such a small zoom range, and the vignetting at f4 is just as bad as ever. Again, stop down to f5.6 or f8 for much brighter corners, but still, this is an absolutely terrible performance overall, and if you're shooting in RAW, you will definitely want to make sure your images are getting corrected. Okay, well, let's put that ugliness behind us and take a look at close-up image quality. This lens can focus down to about 35cm. Close-up image quality at f4 is rather ghostly, unfortunately. Stop down to f5.6 and we see good sharpness, but some purple colour fringing, but at f8, that's mostly gone away. Now, let's see how the lens works against bright lights. At 20mm there's a small amount of fairly transparent flaring, nothing too much to worry about. Zoom in and that turns into a broader glare falling across the image, although it's still fairly transparent, thankfully. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. The good news here is that, even at f4, there's not really any serious coma smearing to have to worry about. When it comes to sun stars, it's only really when stopped down to f11 that they begin to emerge in any kind of noticeable way. At f16 and f22, they get a little stronger but never impress. Next, bokeh. Despite its ultra-wide angle of view, when zoomed in close to a smaller subject, you get somewhat out-of-focus backgrounds here, and those backgrounds always look impressively smooth for an ultra-wide angle zoom lens anyway. Overall, well, this is a simply incredible ultra-wide angle lens, versatile and well able to resolve 100 megapixel images from f5.6, and for some professionals that will make it almost worth any price tag, although landscape photographers trekking around hills and mountains should definitely take into account its large size and weight. Its only nasty little secret is that shocking distortion and vignetting, although thankfully Fuji's corrections take care of it surprisingly well. What's particularly interesting to me is that this lens effectively makes Fuji's 23mm f4 GF prime lens more or less completely redundant as far as I can tell. As nice as that 23mm lens is, there's absolutely no point in buying it when this zoom lens is just as good and offers far more versatility at about the same price. But that's by the by. Ultimately, this excellent lens comes highly recommended for any professional who needs as much resolution in their wide-angle images as possible. Well, thanks for watching everyone. Boy, that lens was a pleasure to test out, although my whole body is still aching from carrying both that and a medium format camera around with me in my shoulder bag for so long. Check out my new playlist if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon page in the description below if you want to support this sponsorship-free channel and get some extra bonus content along the way. Take care everyone, and God bless.